Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to share and subscribe the channel. The markets of Zaret Prime were no place for a soul to walk with a clean conscience. At night, under the flickering glow of neon pylons and rust-pulsing orbital signage, the outer levels of Sector 9 turned into something ancient and cruel. Lights blurred with steam from leaking vents, alien songs crackled from makeshift speakers, and over it all stretched the screaming voices of traders hawking flesh and memory for credits. Captain Jace Thorne didn't want to be here. He didn't belong to this world anymore. He had once worked the black lanes of Zaret Prime as a union-certified mechanic, a quiet man with calloused hands and grease behind his fingernails, married to his work and a ship that barely flew. But after the Urix reactor job went wrong and a corporate envoy died because of a faulty relay he didn't replace, his license was revoked, his contracts collapsed, and his reputation buried beneath a wall of silence. Now, 3 years later, he was no longer Captain Thorne, just Jace, drifting anonymous, living out of a refurbished cargo tug named Karavi, surviving by fixing broken ships and trading scrap. He had come to Zaret Prime to pick up a fusion stabilizer, nothing more, but his steps didn't stop at the merchant deck. Something in the air, the raw buzz of pain, pulled him deeper. He turned a corner past stalls selling cloned livers and emotion patches until he heard it. 20 credits. She's yours. The voice was loud, guttural, triumphant. Jace followed the sound without knowing why. The stall was set into the wall like a wound, metal scaffolds and bright yellow glass illuminated with flickering light bars. Behind the reinforced bios shield stood 4 figures, 2 males, 1 genderless minor hybrid, and her. The girl was small, pale-skinned with an eerie luminous hue under the harsh lights. Slender, almost breakable, with short-cut silvery hair and a collar embedded into her throat that hummed with suppression energy. She didn't tremble, she didn't weep. She only stood, wrists bound with micro-steel, eyes half-lowered but alert. Quiet, but not broken. The merchant tapped the bioglass with his bionic hand. 20 credits, he said again, baring his sharp teeth. This one's a reject, half-trained. Classy psionic, but soft-wired wrong. Can't kill, won't obey, but she's pretty. Good for a pet or whatever else you want to make her. Jace didn't think. He didn't look around. He didn't ask her name. He only pulled out his credit slate, thumbed the chip. 20, he said. The merchant blinked. No haggle. Just give her to me. A smirk. Your funeral. The collar disengaged with a sharp hiss. The bio shield dropped. The girl stumbled slightly, only for a second, before catching herself with eerie poise. Her eyes met Jace's, cold, unreadable. He held out a hand. I'm not your master, he said. Just follow me. She didn't take his hand, but she walked with him, and when they left the market, no one stopped them. Not even fate. The Karavi wasn't much of a home. Its hull was patched with scarred Durac steel, its grav stabilizers moaned every time it landed, and its internal AI, named Dime, had the personality of a bitter accountant. But it was safe. It had air, heat, privacy, and no chains. Jace led her through the narrow corridor, past the navigation bay and the half-gutted med corner, and opened the cargo hold. He'd cleared it recently, made a small sleeping space for supplies. Now he moved a crate aside and nodded. It's not much, he said, but it's yours. She didn't speak, just sat on the edge of the pallet and touched the wall like it might vanish. What's your name? He asked gently. A pause. Sephi, she said. He nodded. I'm Jace. She looked at him with that same unreadable expression. What are you going to do with me? He shook his head. Nothing. You're not property. Then why did you pay? He hesitated, crouched in front of her, arms resting on his knees. Because no one else did. She frowned slightly, eyes narrowed. You paid 20 credits. Do you know what that means? I know it's less than a night's rent in this sector. To them, that means I'm worth less than a meal, that I'm nothing. Jace's jaw tightened. He stood. Then we'll prove them wrong. She said nothing. That night she slept sitting up, with her back against the wall and one eye always open. Jace left a ration bar by her side along with a blanket. When he returned hours later, the bar was gone, but the blanket was draped over his shoulders as he slept at the engine console. He didn't mention it. Neither did she. But it was the first thread of something beginning, not ownership, not debt, something else. The days that followed unfolded without rhythm. There was no routine aboard the Caravive, only the humming of overworked engines, the groan of artificial gravity struggling against worn inertia dampeners, and the quiet presence of Sephi moving like a ghost through its corridors. She did not speak unless spoken to. She did not smile. She never left the ship when they docked at outposts. But she worked. Jace came back from one such trip with parts for the jump coils. He found her crouched in the starboard maintenance shaft, elbow deep in open circuitry. She didn't flinch when he approached. She didn't ask for tools, but he noticed that the guidance beacon was pulsing steadily again, a flicker that had been dead for months. "You fixed it," he said, surprised. She didn't look up. The wiring was corroded. "Took me a while to find the break." He crouched beside her. "You've done maintenance before?" She nodded. "I was assigned to utility before they switched me. Thought if I learned systems, I'd be too useful to sell." He didn't answer at first, then he said, "And they still did." She finally looked at him. "Because I stopped obeying." A pause hung between them, thick and quiet. "I wasn't made for weapons," she added softly. "I was born in a breeding tank, Class C strain, designed to track motion and amplify minor fields. But the moment I asked what would happen to me after training, they stopped feeding me." Jace's got twisted. He sat back, folding his arms. "You're not equipment, Sephi. Not a failed device. You're a person." "No," she said. "I was made." "That doesn't matter." She looked at him for a long time, searching his face for the lie. He didn't give her one. The silence shifted. Later that night, he found her in the cockpit. The lights were dimmed, her knees were pulled up to her chest, and her eyes were fixed on the stars streaking past the viewport. He walked over and sat beside her. "I remember staring at space for the first time," he said. "Didn't think it could feel lonely." "It doesn't feel lonely to me," she said. He blinked. She turned to him, her voice quieter now. "It feels like the first place I've ever been allowed to breathe." And from that moment forward, the ship changed. He didn't tell her what to do. She didn't ask what she was worth. They just worked together, tools in hand, covered in grime, piecing a life from broken things. Because sometimes healing doesn't come with a moment. It comes with 1,000 unspoken kindnesses. The alert struck in the dead of cycle, a shrieking red pulse on the central console followed by a blunt transmission in fractured binary. Not a warning, a ping. Someone was scanning them. Specifically, her. Jace jolted awake from the bench he'd collapsed on. Dime, the AI, already had a readout on the screen. Signal coded to Uroth-class slaver frequency. The machine droned, tag recognizes a prior Class C asset, identity trace suggests match. Jace turned toward the engineering corridor. "Where is she?" "Gun bay." Jace raced down the ladder. Sephi was already in the forward turret, bare feet planted on the cold alloy, eyes glassy with concentration. She had jacked herself into the targeting visor, her hands moved across the controls like she was playing an instrument no one else could hear. "How'd you know?" he asked. "I felt it," she said, like a thread yanked hard. "Can you break it?" "Not yet, but if they get closer, I can burn them." He looked at her, the faint tremble in her arms, the focus in her gaze. "You don't have to fight for me." "I'm not," she said. "I'm fighting for me." A moment later, the proximity warning flashed again. Jace climbed into the co-pilot seat beside her. "Then let's do it together." Outside, the black of space split as a long-spined slaver vessel pierced the field. It moved like a serpent, its weapon arms flexing. "Dime, how's our charge?" Jace shouted. "Barely at 32%. One shot, maybe two." "Sephi." She closed her eyes. "I only need one." The enemy ship's first pulse fired, a wave of neural suppression meant to lock down her kind. But she wasn't their kind anymore. Her psionics flared raw, no command phrases, no software permissions, just will. She fired. The beam cracked through the void, striking the slaver sensory array. Then she fired again. This time, she whispered something into the trigger, and the enemy ship lit up from the inside, flame crawling across its bone-white hull, collapsing in on itself. When the silence returned, Jace exhaled. Sephi sat frozen, pale, breathing hard. He reached for her hand. She gripped it back like an anchor. "I never did that before," she whispered. "You didn't need to until now." She looked at him with something new in her expression, not fear, not shame, but the first flicker of pride. And in the silence between systems, as the stars blinked past again, she reached over and touched his cheek with fingers still shaking. "Next time," she said, "don't leave me alone." "I won't," Jace whispered, and meant it with everything he had. Zerit Prime was behind them. The slaver ship had been dusted into black ash, but the consequences echoed. Sephi had killed, not under orders, not under programming, with her own hands and a choice that belonged to her. It changed the shape of her silence. Her footsteps were firmer now. Her shoulders didn't hunch as much. But something else began stirring too. Unseen currents, silent beacons passed between dark stations. The story spread. A human bought a broken psionic for 20 credits, then she destroyed a slaver cruiser. The kind of story that never dies in a galaxy where fear rules. And it reached the ears of Vosha, pirate queen of the Tyan Fringe. They crossed paths at Rexo's Junction, a half-dead supply port orbiting a decaying moon. Jace didn't want to stop there. His gut said no, but they needed coolant and backup filters, and it was the only station within range. They landed low profile, just after cycle shift. Sephi stayed on board, patching heat regulators in the underdeck. Jace stepped into the merchant hall alone. He didn't make it 5 paces before 3 of Vash's sentries found him. "Thorn," one rasped. "You've got her on board, don't you?" Jace didn't answer. They led him at rifle point to the central dome where Vasha waited. She sat on a throne made from shipwreckage, her armor shimmering with blood metal, fingers adorned with memory rings taken from captains who no longer breathed. Her mouth curled with curiosity. "So," she purred, "you're the mechanic who made a weapon fall in love with him." Jace didn't flinch. "She's not a weapon." Vasha leaned forward. "Then you've underestimated her. Or worse, you're wasting her." Jace met her eyes. "Say what you want. I'm not handing her over." "Oh, I'm not here to beg," she smiled. "I'm here to offer." She clapped twice. Her guards dragged in a crate. 10 million credits and crystallized energy blocks, stacked high and humming with value. "You give her to me," Vosa said. "She joins my fleet. We'll never be owned again, I swear it. I'll even let you stay. You get a dreadnought, a captain's quarter, and full command of my armory. You'll never run again." Jace exhaled, then laughed. Shaw blinked. "You think I'm laughing at the money?" Jace said, voice calm. "I'm laughing because you think that's what she needs, another cage, just with better cushions. You'd rather run forever. I'd rather live with her for 5 honest minutes than rule your whole damned galaxy." Vosha's smile faded. "I could kill you." "You won't. Because you know what she is now, and you don't want to find out what she'll become if you hurt me." Vosa considered him for a moment, then she leaned back and waved him off. "Go then, lover boy. But if I ever see her fight like that again..." "You'll thank her," Jace said, "because she'll save someone who needs it." He left without another word, and when he returned to the Karavi, Sephi was waiting by the ramp. She had heard every word through the ship's comm. She didn't speak, but she took his hand and held it the entire flight back to nowhere. 3 days passed in silence again, not the hard silence of shame or confusion, but something lighter, a quiet shared between 2 people who had stopped running from it. They worked, they ate together now. Sephi made jokes, soft awkward ones, but they made Jace laugh harder than he had in years. Dime complained more often. The ship, weirdly, ran smoother. Jace caught himself watching her too much, the way she tucked a wire behind her ear, the way she talked to the tools like they were old friends, the way she never flinched when he passed her in the halls now. And one evening, after calibrating the lower hull sensors, they sat side by side under the glass roof of the cargo bay, where the stars ran like rivers. She stared up at them for a long time before speaking. "I don't think I was supposed to survive," she said. Jace turned to her. "What do you mean?" "They designed us to be expendable. 5-year psionic burn rate. When we start showing dreams or hesitation, they scrap us. I'm off program. He said nothing, only watched her speak what she never dared before. And you're afraid you'll break? He asked gently. No. I'm afraid I'll be something so different that I won't know who I am anymore. Maybe that's a good thing. She glanced at him. How? Because what you were made for never mattered. What you choose to be, that's everything. She blinked slowly, then said, I've never been kissed. He felt his pulse tighten in his chest. I don't want you to kiss me out of pity, she said. I want you to kiss me because you want to. I do. Then say it. He leaned in. Sephi, he said, her name on his lips like a vow. I want you. And then he kissed her. It wasn't urgent. It wasn't desperate. It was soft, reverent, like a man kissing not someone broken, but someone beautiful. She melted into it slowly, as if learning how to trust her own heartbeat again. When they finally pulled apart, her eyes glistened. I think, she whispered, that might have fixed something in me. He smiled. No, he said. You fixed it yourself. I just got to witness it. And above them, the stars said nothing, but they glowed a little brighter for them anyway. They docked on Varela Station for parts. Nothing unusual, nothing risky. A neutral hub on the edge of disputed space, thick with fuel smoke, old metal, and the scent of travelers who'd forgotten home. Jace had been there before, years ago. The station hadn't changed, but this time he walked with Sephi beside him. She wore no collar now, no bindings, just a flight jacket over utility gear with her silver hair braided down her back. She stood tall beside him, chin up, eyes alert, not invisible, not hidden. And because of that, people stared. Is that her? Jace heard from a corner. That's the psionic girl, the one who burned the Uroth ship. Thought she was a slave. She's with him now. Mechanic from Earth. It didn't bother Jace, but he could feel her fingers tighten in his as they moved through the crowd. He wanted to shield her, to pull her back to the Caravive, but he didn't. He let her walk the full floor of the station without interruption. They were almost at the part shop when a voice called out from the far wall, Sephi. It wasn't loud, but it stopped her cold. Jace turned. 2 figures approached, tall, pale, with identical bone-white tattoos spiraling from their temples to their lips. They wore robes, not armor, but they radiated something heavier than threat. Not soldiers, enforcers. Class Z origin handlers. Return with us, one said. You're still tagged. You know the law. Sephi didn't move. Jace stepped in front of her, body tense. She's not property. She is unfinished, the other said, and unregistered. That makes her dangerous. She's free. No, the first said. She's a mistake. Jace barely felt his hands move. The pistol was already raised. The crowd around them backed away. Then Sephi stepped forward, slowly, gently, and placed her hand over Jace's. Let me, she whispered. He lowered the weapon. She turned to face the handlers. I remember you, she said to them. You were there the day they changed my group schedule. You sent 2 of them for evaluation. They never came back. It was protocol. She tilted her head. Then this is mine. Her psionics flared, not loud, not violent, just a sudden stillness like the air had been pulled out of the room. The handler staggered. One dropped to his knees, the other clutched his temples, groaning. Tell your masters, she said, that I'm not for reclamation. If they come again, I'll end them in silence. And she turned and walked away. Jace followed. No one else moved for a long time. Back aboard the Karavi, she curled her fingers around the console. I didn't want to hurt them, she said softly. I wanted them to know I could. You did the right thing. She turned to him. Do you really believe that? He nodded. You made a choice. That's what makes you you. Her lips parted, and for the first time, she smiled without sadness. The sky tore open in the Trident Rift. Jace didn't know how they tracked them, not exactly. Maybe the Class C tags were deeper than Sephi thought. Maybe Voza had finally sold information. Or maybe Fate simply hadn't finished testing them. Whatever the reason, the fleet came fast. 3 ships, 1 command vessel, none small. Their first warning was a pulse wave that shorted Dime's core for 40 seconds, long enough to stall the nav array, long enough to reroute life support. When Jace rebooted systems, they were already surrounded. "This is the Sovereign Chain," came the voice through the comm. "You carry unauthorized psionic material. Prepare for immediate reclamation." Sephi sat across from him, hands steady, eyes bright with quiet fire. "They'll take you," Jace said. "No trial, no talk, just experiments." "Not this time." "You sure?" She looked at him and nodded. "I'll protect you this time." She stood and walked to the weapons terminal. Jace followed, loading old munitions they'd salvaged from Rexos. Nothing fancy, nothing clean. The enemy hailed again. No response, Sephi told the console. Then she activated the neural link. For a moment, everything in the ship pulsed: metal, lights, engines, even air, like the vessel had become part of her body. Then she moved. The Karavi spun like a dancer in 0G, flanking the first ship with impossible speed. Jace watched through the viewport as a blast of psionic light lanced from their modified turret. The ship fractured down the middle, clean, exact. A second vessel fired. Sephi didn't dodge. She absorbed it. Her psionics wrapped the bolt mid-space, held it like a coiled star, then flung it back. Explosion. Debris. 1 ship remained. It ran. Jace leaned forward, stunned. "You could have destroyed all of them." "I could have," she said. "But I'm not like them." They sat together in the cockpit, sweat slick on their skin, hearts pounding. He reached for her hand. This time she took his before he could even ask. "What happens now?" he asked. "We keep flying," she said, "until I'm not what they made me, and you're no longer alone." He smiled faintly. "Then we fly." Far and together, in the silence between stars, they passed into freedom, one battle at a time. In the weeks that followed the Rift ambush, something shifted in the galaxy. It was subtle, nothing announced, nothing broadcasted, but the ripples were real. The Sovereign Chain ship stopped trailing them. Ports that once denied their docking codes opened without question. Even slavers on the far rim stopped whispering about psionic capture prices. The ghost of Sephi's past was dying, one truth at a time. Jace knew better than to speak of it. He simply stayed beside her, tuned the Karavi like a sacred instrument, and let her live each new day with a little more space in her lungs. She laughed more now, sometimes over things that weren't even funny. She walked barefoot across the ship, sang softly while splicing wires, and asked endless questions about Earth she'd once been too ashamed to wonder about. But one night, she surprised him. They were parked in orbit above a gas giant, letting the ship cool after an overload on the port fusion loop. Jace sat beneath the central dome, legs crossed, eyes half shut, sipping a bitter drink that barely passed as tea. Sephi approached and dropped something in his lap. It was a nameplate, bent, scratched, but clean enough to read: Jace Thorne, Mechanic, Orbital Grade 3. "Where'd you get this?" he asked, stunned. "I traded for it at a border station while you were haggling for parts," she said, crouching beside him. "It's yours, right? From before everything?" He nodded slowly. "I thought it was long gone. I wanted you to have it." "Why?" She hesitated, then reached into her own pocket and pulled out a small data chip. "My name," she said softly, "isn't Sephi." He turned to her. "I made it up. It was what one of the techs used to call me, short for the code on my collar, Sep, H1. I didn't even know that wasn't my name until I decoded my batch logs from the old handlers." She held out the chip. "My name is Nara." He stared at her, at the strange gravity of the moment. She had offered her real name, not the one forced, not the one assumed, but the one she chose to reclaim. He didn't ask if she was sure. He didn't need to. He said it once, whispered it like a prayer. "Nara." She smiled like someone finally seen in full light. And Jace, quiet, scarred, loyal Jace, knew in his bones that nothing in the galaxy could take her from him now. Years passed like slow waves across the black. The Karavi became more than a ship. It became myth, the vessel where a human mechanic once bought a discarded girl for 20 credits and instead of chains, gave her a seat at the controls. Together they patched broken engines, healed old wounds, and rewrote the unspoken laws that once ruled the stars. Some said they were bounty hunters. Others said freedom runners. Some whispered that they helped burn half the slave ledger network from the inside, although no one could prove it. All they knew was this: wherever the Karavi docked, psionics walked free, no collars, no handlers, no auctions. And always, a human and a silver-haired woman walked side by side, never leading, never following, only moving forward. One night, far from any starport or habitable moon, they drifted in open space. Jace stood in the viewing dome, watching Nara sleep, curled up near the fusion conduit, her breath steady, a faint pulse of psionic glow warming the air around her. He pulled the old 20-credit chip from his locker, still scratched, still intact. He held it in his palm and whispered, "The best trade I ever made." The ship purred around him, alive and peaceful. He didn't know where they'd end up next. It didn't matter, because 20 credits had never bought him a slave, it had bought him a future. And when Nara stirred in her sleep and whispered his name without waking, he knew he had never saved her. She had saved him.